Boom! According to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's Sunday, 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. As always, good to see so many people already in the comments. In fact, we've got Mr. Cordy Chep. Yes, we're talking about Australian politics and how relatively mild Japanese politics is. Aussie politics is harsh, but yes, there's a line I remember from, I believe he was a Labour leader at the time, and he didn't last very long, but he called the government a conga line of suckholes once, which was a bit of an Australian political classic. That was one of the cleanest statements that you hear from there. I was just suggesting maybe the Japanese politicians should try that sometime, but yes, no, totally okay. I think starting the day with that. Good to see Erin, moderator. Good to have you with us in the chat. We've got Kuberus Tenshi, Mr. Cordy Chep just said hello. We've got Sergeant Bilko. Good to see you. Who else we got in here? We've got Quint Rankid. Good to see you, Quint Rankid. Shubas from Panama. Once again, not late either, indeed. The Panamanian coffee is working. We've got the Condor. Good to see you, the Condor. Welcome back. Who else we got in here? That seems to be it so far, unless I've it's jumped ahead. It does that sometimes whenever I scroll down. I see I've got Tokyo 503. Good to see you from Tokyo, where the temperatures have suddenly dropped to a chilly 10 degrees. Actually, I went for a jog this evening. It was lovely. I went really, really fast, actually. But yes, winter has hit all of a sudden. So yeah, yabba dabba do indeed. Thanks for reminding about the like and whatnot. I did something interesting tonight. You may have noticed I did not turn on the monetization. I'm kind of decided. I've been playing around with some experiments with the channel, but I actually think in the end of the day, even with monetization turned on, I was just wondering, I was curious to see how it could go with all the buttons turned on. And frankly, it doesn't really do very much. And honestly, I'm not really trying to make money off it. I was just sort of curious to see if it would help things like engagement and so on. Like what would happen if I left the videos with that on, if YouTube would highlight it more. A hot spring full of blowhards. That's not a bad one. Yes, Mr. Kubras Tenshi, the emojis are definitely triggering today. So, yeah, I've done that, but I've come to the conclusion, honestly, like it ends up being like a $5 paycheck every like 4 months, and then I have to declare that on tax, like I did this year. There's really nothing, and I get aggro from people who say that the ads are sometimes set too aggressively, which is never intentional. So yeah, I think I'm just going to go without them. I'm going to go back to going without them. It's sort of interesting to do that. But yeah, that said, I mean, I think I don't really need to. I've got a great community around this channel already. Erin is an awesome moderator who comes in, and I just love hanging out with you guys every week. So yeah, like I say, I do it always out of curiosity and to see if I can figure out all the technical issues, of which there are many, and I actually enjoy that stuff. So yeah, anyway, we'll see. We're probably going to go back to not monetizing for a while, so we see how we go with that. Barry Convex, good to see you, Barry Convex. The Condor, have you thought about doing live chat on Discord? We could have more of an interactive discussion. Yeah, I mean, I always think about other platforms. I must admit, the thing is that I think I've got a really good number of people who, generally about between 30 and 50 people who join the live streams. And, that's a good number. That's a number of people I can remember all the names and interact with, and and they're all in one place. Whereas I think if I went to Twitch or Discord or other sites, most of the people who come and watch here probably wouldn't find out about that. So it'd just be like me and one or two people. And if it goes well, it goes well. But I'm not sure I have an audience size that would, stay that would make it worthwhile to jump over. I must admit, I am curious. But I like the simplicity of this. So yeah, I'm open to the idea of using Discords. I mean, the Condor, if you've got suggestions for me on how I could do it in a way that would be very low maintenance and you think that might work and that everyone watching might enjoy, I'm totally open to it. But I'm not really looking into it just because, again, I prefer to just be predictable and stable and be here. But yeah, I think for functionality, certainly I think Twitch is actually excellent. And you know what, I mean, yeah, that's the main reason I stick with YouTube. It's never been about monetization or anything like that. It's just simply to be apart from the fact the setup is all very straightforward and so on, repetitive every week. Yeah, it's just a sort of, to me, I'd hate to connect with less of you through changing platform, so there'd have to be a meaningful change. But there again, I mean, maybe I should take a poll. Would you all watch if I moved to Twitch, or if I I think Discord doesn't work with, I couldn't do this on video with Discord, right? Although I think what Twitch and even YouTubers do is actually they run a Discord at the same time and as the video. So I guess I could figure that out. But yeah, I'm open to that. I'm curious what people think about that. Twitch bans like crazy. Do you think I really have anything that would get banned on Twitch other than not playing enough video games, or 1 hour videos not being long enough? I'm not sure there's really anything from Twitch. If they want, I don't know, I could play Pong or something like that while we talk. That would be fun. But Fredo-san, hey, como vai? A long time no see, man. Whereabouts are you nowadays? Are you still in Japan, or are you in Brazil, or what? Fredo-san, Natsukashi, great to see you, man. Great to see you there in the chat. We've got DJ Sunnyside up, working on a fun dark beat now. 'Tis the season, indeed. It is that time of year, and great to, I just love how you are keeping up with making the music and stuff like that. I've really fallen off that. So yeah. DJ Sunnyside up. Microsoft Teams, nice troll, Mr. Cordychep, nice troll. Well, you know what? They actually had a site called Mixter that actually looked quite nice, and I had some people who were like game streamers who said, yeah, you should check it out, and it did actually look quite nice. But yeah, Microsoft shut it down because nobody used it. So Teams, absolute Skype. Yeah, maybe I should just host this on my MySpace. I think it still exists. Justin Timberlake is running it now, so it must be fine. Hiko on a hot tub stream. Yeah, that would be a quick way. If I wanted to lose all my subscribers, if I wanted to be like Brewster's Millions and have a mission to like lose as many subscribers as possible, that is exactly what I would do. I would stream from a hot tub. That would definitely do it. Dragon Ball TV, good to see you, Dragon Ball TV. Welcome. For you, Japan will open back February or March 2022. Yeah, I'm hearing April from some people, but there again, I'm seeing good signs. Today, 40 cases in Tokyo Prefecture. And remember, this is just Tokyo Prefecture. It's just one of the municipal boundaries within Greater Tokyo. 14 million people in Tokyo, but 40 new cases in a city of 40 million. We've never had a lockdown here. No lockdowns. So we're doing almost too well. I do not believe that there are conspiracies to manipulate the numbers or hide the bodies or anything like that. I despise how people casually just make up BS like that, to fit their sense of what's a conspiracy. And often they're the same people that are condemning anti-vaxxers, yet they're behaving exactly like anti-vaxxers, making that stuff up. The idea that doctors and testing stations and whatever are all getting together to help some politician is rubbish. But yeah, it is true that Japan is not trying to test unsymptomatic people or anyone. Of course, anyone can go get a test from convenience stores nowadays, or not convenience stores, but pharmacies, and you can send a test in, and it will be counted if it's tested. Right now, the positivity rate right now on tests is less than 2%, and 5% is considered sufficient testing. And we've got 40 cases, so we're actually doing really well. But there are these waves, and there is almost no doubt that there's going to be another wave at some point. It's going to go up again. It's winter is just starting, so that's going to contribute to it. But yeah. In terms of how we're doing pretty well. It's going to go up again, but at the same time, Japan is approaching. I'm going to talk about this in the first topic anyway, and I don't have a lot of topics tonight. But it could happen earlier than we expect. I've actually seen people on Facebook. Well, I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm going to come back to it and talk about that properly and completely as the first topic. But yeah, good question there. Dragon Ball TV. We've got one John-san. Good to see you. Fureto-san, back in Kyoto for a bit. Well, that's back from Kyoto. I've been back from Kyoto for a bit. Does that mean back in Brazil from Kyoto or back somewhere else from Kyoto? But yeah, pretty awesome. So many new platforms. Is YT still the de facto standard? Yeah, it absolutely is. It's just where people are, and it's the easiest to use. I'm kind of up for the idea of supporting other platforms, but it's a hassle for me, and it's also a hassle for viewers. So it is a high threshold to change, even though it's all free and it's relatively easy to change. AV84K, do they turn the frogs gay though? Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, that just proves that it's working. The Condor, is there discussion of vaccine mandates in Japan? No. Well, I don't understand exactly what you mean by that. There certainly is already the idea of using vaccine passports to be entitled to tourist discounts and to be able to enter the country and so on. There is the idea of vaccine mandates that all people at your job need to get vaccinated or you will lose your job is impossible under Japanese law, the same way that lockdowns are impossible under Japanese law. But there will be a lot of soft mandates that you won't be able to travel, or you won't have the same degree of freedom without it. So there are mandates. There will be things that to enjoy certain freedoms, you'll need to prove that you're vaccinated. That's definitely in the works. But the idea of trying to force all government workers, or hospital workers, or company workers, or whatever, no, they're not using that. And they've done it without mandates, and they've gotten higher vaccination rates than a lot of countries that are doing it. I guess the problem with vaccine mandates is you do get people who, just because it's a mandate, freak out and sort of protest back about it, like you get in Australia and so on. But yeah. Indeed, Odie Jr., I always only have a few topics, but it takes over an hour. I genuinely have very, very few topics tonight. I was just looking. I've had a busy week with work. I've had a lot of busy weeks with work lately, but there just hasn't been a lot of news going on. I mean, we are having the national election coming up, but if you ask me what are the main campaign issues, it's just the same as always. Do you want more LDP or less LDP? So I've got no topics really that stand out that I've saved that I think are worthwhile talking about. But this is part of the reason why as well. I can certainly talk about topics that you want to talk about. I see the Condor firing out questions and topics, which I love actually. I can't believe they're trying to fire people in the US who don't take the vaccine. My body, my choice. Yeah. I mean, look, my personal opinion is. I think if you're there are certain jobs where it can be a requirement, I think, and they are talking in Japan, for example, about in hospitals, about having, and airlines and so on as well, that if you're not vaccinated, they'll put you in some role where at least you don't engage with members of the public so that you don't put them in danger. I don't know. I mean, at the same time, I've talked about this before. When I moved to Singapore when I was a kid, I had to get a malaria shot. Most colleges in the US require shots when you have babies. In Japan, again, it's not mandatory, but you're foolish if you don't get your kid immunized. So I got mumps as a kid, and a while I had, as a normal case, I gave it to my dad, who nearly died from it. So of course, everybody's got the freedom to be an idiot, but at the same time, it's not just you. So it's kind of like, what I like about Japan is living in a country where people do the right thing without the government needing to take that freedom to do the right thing away from them and force them to do it. People just do it because it's the right thing to do. I think just like people are free to choose not to get vaccinated for whatever reason. I mean, the fact is we're moving into a world as well where when we get into the 70 to 80% vaccinated realm, we're just going to go back to having no lockdowns, and basically it'll be the unvaccinated that are at risk, and both, in terms of taking up resources in the medical system and risking dying and risking long COVID. But I think that's just, I think people should be free to make that choice, although they're going to have less freedoms as a result of that choice, and less options in what they can do in their lives. But people should still be free to make that choice. So, and certainly at work, for example, in Japan, you are not allowed to pressure people about it. It's just funny how the country just gets on and does the right thing without the idea of government having to hit you over the head with it. That's something I like about Japan. The Condor continuing, just out of curiosity, I'll read. I will start the topics in a moment. We've got most healthcare workers have already been infected and have natural immunity. Well, no, that's not true in terms of you can still catch it again. They're not immune. And the having antibodies from having caught it is not the same as being vaccinated against it. You still have better protection if you're vaccinated. But why force them to take a vaccine? Because they can give it to vulnerable patients, and you have more antibodies and better protection if you're vaccinated. To me, it's ridiculous. Even if they've had it, the idea that they wouldn't get vaccinated for it, and the idea that you have a medical worker that would be opposed to vaccinating against a disease that vulnerable people can die from is absurd. Like third world stuff. And this is the thing that scares me about America, is that America is where so much of the world's science and medical innovation has happened. And it's funny, is that it seems like the third world appreciates these things more than the first world is starting to look like third world. I mean, seriously, they're looking like witch doctors if they don't accept medicine. And how many people get stupid advice from Facebook where they think that so much rumor based stuff, the people drinking bleach and taking a horse, parasite medicine, all this sort of stuff. Seriously, actually, Africa, the developing world, developing countries in Asia, actually people are better informed than America, even though America is spoiled by actually having access to all the best medicine. It's embarrassing, as my opinion. Whoops. Anyway, went off the end, deep in a little bit there. For all of that, I actually think it's good that Japan doesn't have mandates. And again, I think people are free to be stupid. It just surprises me that so many people take that choice when it's offered to them. That said, let's talk about COVID. It's actually the first topic anyway. Let's dive in. I think I said hello to anyone. If you haven't said, oh, Remman in Japan, haven't said hello to you. In the military, you had so many vaccinations, can't even count. Part of your job to keep yourself safe. That's right. Now, COVID shots are for me and others no big deal. Although I did see again, news shows talking about there are military people who are like objecting to being forced to take COVID shots in the military, even though they took all the other shots. Because people are now equating it with being political, which just again is akin to believing in witch doctors, if you ask me. But yeah, people quitting the military over it. But again, it's not. I had shots. I've had no problem. I've been getting the flu shot every year. I don't give a crap. It's medicine. I take an aspirin if I have a headache. I get a flu shot when it's ahead of flu season. Why? Because that's the illness and this is the medicine, and don't be an idiot. It's pretty simple. JZM, I had multiple mandatory vaccinations, health workers, even more of them, yeah. Quinn Rankin, the horse medicine, although not the actual horse version of it, and the fact that people are asking doctors to prescribe it, and doctors, and courts are trying to force doctors to prescribe. It's getting silly, and I don't want to talk about America. And certainly, there's no problem in Japan of people taking animal medicine. So yes, AV84K. Didn't older people always tell us not to believe stuff on the internet? Yes, because I think they're the ones who are the ones who made the mistake of believing it the most. I do find that ironic myself, but your body, your choice, though, absolutely, including. Yeah, like I believe in legalizing weed, even though it's just the same as alcohol and tobacco. It's all bad for you, but you're allowed to mess yourself up. The thing about contagious diseases, though, of course, is that it's not just yourself, and that's why it does make sense to some extent to make it mandatory. But like I said, I think Japan's working, and I'm glad I'm here. So, what's happening with the re-entry thing? Well, some good news. Although the political sort of discussion is that it might be April. I guess people are waiting to see how the next wave goes, and there is a fear that it could come back and we could have a really nasty winter, and it wouldn't be a good time, especially politically, to let people in now right before the next wave starts, and then the wave could be banned on letting foreigners in. So it could be seen as being a good thing even for the foreigners to not be blamed for the next wave, to let the next wave start up and run its course before. And based on that, indeed, it would be February, March, or April. That said, right now, there are countries, there's Victoria, New South Wales are opening up based on having high levels of vaccinations. Other countries, Singapore is starting to do this, and Japan is actually doing better than a lot of these places in terms of vaccinations and case numbers. And it still is closed up. Now, some good news is I've seen people on Facebook, assistant language teachers, mentioning that their visas have come through, their jet visas have come through, and they are quietly coming into the country. There again, I know other people waiting for work visas, and they haven't heard anything yet. But that's the other good news, is that immigration has never been a political topic in Japan. It's never debated in elections. The Prime Minister never comes in and says, we're going to start letting the foreigners in. Abe let in more foreigners than any Prime Minister in Japanese history. He was the most foreign-friendly prime minister ever that Japan has ever had, in spite of the foreign media saying that he's a nationalist, racist, and dangerous, and whatever. He's actually been the nicest one. And all of that, he got away with it. He'd say, how could a right-wing nationalist Japan first prime minister be so pro-immigration? Well, it's very easy. He never brought it up. He just did it. He didn't ask anybody. He was politically safe enough to do that, and frankly, he just let the Ministry of Justice do it based on what the employment industry, based on what employers were saying that they needed. They needed extra workers. And it was just a mechanical policy choice, as it should be now. I mean, right now, Japan is in a crisis. It can't reboot the economy without the workers that it needs to let in, and including the tourism industry, which is not going to work just based off government stimulus and domestic travel. So it's good that NHK, this is an NHK special where they are now starting to highlight sympathetically the plight, which has been going on for 18 months now, of people still stranded outside of Japan waiting to get in. And for a long time, they did not highlight the issue of permanent residents like myself that were trapped outside of the country, even though Japanese could return. Actual established residents with spouses and families in Japan could not return to Japan for a long time. That is now resolved. If I left Japan now, I could come back in. But there's still a lot of people waiting to come to Japan for the first time, and they are stuck. I think the fact that NHK is highlighting it is generally these sort of stories are not made in isolation from, well, there has been a lot of lobbying going on in the background, but often these stories are done with the cooperation of the government agencies that they're collecting information from, and they are also sensitive to and react to that. Given that the national election is going to be at the end of October, just a couple of weeks ago now. Honestly, once that's over, presuming that the LDP is going to remain in government after that, and there won't be any dramatic change of government, which might put a freeze on new policy ideas, I actually am optimistic that, I mean, honestly, it doesn't. There should be no problem with allowing a resumption of at least business work visas, people coming here to work or study, from letting them come back in. Like I say, the only thing is the optics of doing it right before the next wave starts. But if you ask me, logically, it should be able to happen even in December, frankly, even November, actually, the way that things are right now. Japan is doing so much better than so many places that have decided to open up. Yeah, if I was putting money down, I would say February. If I was putting money down, I'd say February. I'm hearing people say April, but that seems just ridiculous to me. What I think will happen is it will happen by stealth. People will just start being told that they can come, and the numbers will increase without there being any sort of an announcement. But I would, you know what, I wouldn't be too surprised if things stay good, if things do not get worse, and I think things will get worse in November. That's when we'll have the next wave, probably. But if the next wave doesn't materialize, I reckon November or December people could start being let back into Japan. So I think there is really good news on the horizon. This is from the 15th, so that is from Friday. Percentage of the population, including kids who can't be vaccinated, right? So, you know, this is like out of a possible maximum of like 80%. 75% of people, the entire country has had at least one shot, and 66.5% have received both shots. So we are like days away from being 70% of the total population. And with that, what's been really interesting the last few days has been the number of total vaccinations per day, which has been over 1 million every day steadily for like more than 2 months, I think, is started to fall below that, which implies that, okay, now they're getting through there. They're starting to reach the end of all the people who want to be vaccinated. They're starting to now, that phase is starting to end, and there are fewer vaccinations per day. So the good news is, for all the talk about Japanese vaccine hesitancy, without mandates and without anything else, just people having concerns about the safety of it and saying that in polls, but that there's no real big anti-vax movement in Japan. There are freaks. It's a country of 120 million people. There are freaks here, just like there are freaks in America who are anti-vax, but you know, who protest in front of train stations. But it's always 5 or 10, honestly, people who I think should be in like mental institutions. And you know, they make a lot of noise, but there are a very small number of people who don't deserve any attention, and that's pretty much as it is. I mean, there are people protesting in front of PCR clinics saying, don't get PCR tests, it's all a government conspiracy. But as you can see by the numbers, most people it's the same as with the right-wingers. They are just fringe idiots, you know, desperate for attention because they are such a fringe. The other thing that was really interesting about this particular tweet is it shows the number of the percentage of people who have received at least one shot in each prefecture. And in this, the actual comment from Wataru Tenga on Twitter was, there are some people complaining that there has been a reprioritization of large cities, Osaka and Tokyo, to get more shots, but this was after a long time where actually it was the opposite, where they were just giving a fixed number of shots to every prefecture and municipality, which is favoring the prefectures like Saga and Wakayama and Yamaguchi that are worth a lot of political votes and don't have many people. And they are still, when you look at this, they are the most vaccinated. Fukui Prefecture, home of Japan's most nuclear power plants, 79.2%. Akita, another remote prefecture, 78.8%. Yamaguchi, the home of Abe Shinzo, 78.3%. So again, you look at these, it's actually, you know, Tokyo is a bit down the list, although it certainly has come up and it was a lot worse. And this is the thing that I was screaming about. Tokyo is where both the highest numbers of cases and the highest number of cases per population, yet we were not getting prioritized for vaccinations, which was ridiculous, given that you've got places like Fukui, that are always close to zero cases anyway. It's great that they're vaccinated, but again, why are you prioritizing places that don't even have COVID over places that are really struggling with it? Okinawa, interestingly, the lowest, even though they've had rates of COVID equal to Tokyo. So, but still, overall, such good progress with vaccinations. One, showing that Japanese, in spite of voicing hesitancy and concern about the safety of the vaccines, in the end of the day, the vaccination rates here are better than Israel, better than, they look like we're going to pass UK very soon, better than some of the most vaccinated places in the US. So it actually shows that, again, that's what I like about this place. People have a good measure of common sense. That means that you don't have the government like telling you what to do, because people just know. I mean, which isn't to say that there isn't a percentage of idiots out there, but yeah, pretty large percentage of people with good common sense. The other thing that was interesting was, of course, the United States announcing Japan will not do something like this, but America announced November 8th that they will be reopening their borders to foreign visitors. And again, the fact that the USA is doing that and Europe's already done that by and large, and Singapore is doing that and Australia is doing that, Japan will feel the peer pressure from that. And this is another reason why I think we're not going to wait until April. I think it's going to be, it could be, again, depending on how the sixth wave goes, it could be November or December, but I'd put my money on February. So I think lots of good signs anyway for people who are waiting to get into Japan. Finally, sort of COVID related, there's restaurants now able to reopen and serve alcohol. One restaurant I thought had a very good idea. Okay, this phone does not let me, let's just see if it works in Safari. It does not allow me to open content. Okay, there's a picture anyway. It looked like the Get Smart cone of silence, which I thought was pretty cool. Which you would actually, the idea, they were advertising that yes, you could lower that during dinner. And they would have like lamps with like lampshades, so transparent lampshades that people could have around them while they talk to each other at a dinner party. I thought a little bit extreme. I kind of looked like fun, except I was also thinking, what if a moth like flies up under there and you'd be like trapped under a lampshade with the moth while you're eating? Like that wouldn't be good, and it looks silly. But there again, I mean, it looked kind of fun. So yeah, that's the first story of the night, talking about COVID. There's only like 3 more, so doing okay still for time. I'm going to scroll back and see who's got comments in here. And oh yeah, booster shots, good topic there, Quinn. I will come back to that. So here we go. Quinn Rankid, it's not an animal medicine if it's approved and prescribed for you. Sure, if it's prescribed, or at least if there's a human dose. I think the problem is that the animal stuff is also totally different proportions. Like you can get it from a doctor or whatever, but the idea of people going and buying it off the shelf, like when it's in doses set for horses, is just silly. Juan Johnson, if you've not got many topics this week, if you've not too many topics, your insight on 2 headlines this week, if you saw, would be cool, both from Nikkei Asia. Hit me, Johnson. Happy to talk about them. Juan Johnson, Japan's 30-year wage slump. That is one of my topics, actually. I did pick that one up. Hangs over distribution debate. Yes, so that is one that I'll talk to. And Japan to set up high-tech fund with iron economic stability. Interesting, Juan Johnson. I tweeted both out. I considered the second one, but I didn't choose it, but I'm happy to talk about it. The first one is coming up, so I'm way ahead of you. The second one, I'm sort of like wait and see on that, but I'll tell you what, when I talk about the first one of your topics, remind me and I'll come back to the second one then, which will be at the end of the show anyway, which isn't very far away in terms of topics. So no, well picked. You're actually very well synced in with what I'm interested in talking about. Odie Jr., speaking of waves, when do we get to the boss wave? Because I don't know. Well, I'm hoping that we just had the boss wave. If you mean the boss is in like the final boss video game, is that what you mean? If that's what you mean, I hope we just had it. But people are afraid that it could be the next one because we have winter right now and Delta and maybe Mu, and of course the big fear as well is that we could get another variant which will just not, which the shots won't work for. But fingers crossed. Hopefully we've just had it, but we never know. So, Kerberos Tenshi, the Condor, people debating there. We've got, wish JP would open up, says Aaron. Me too. I mean, it'd be kind of embarrassing if Japan opened up after Australia and New Zealand, which are like the most locked up countries. But yes, Quinn Rankid, what about booster shots? Top of the news tonight. They are talking in Japan about starting up booster shots. The plan at the moment is they're looking at, there isn't clear data apparently. There is some data that suggests that having a different shot as your booster shot, the one that you got before, like if you got Pfizer, get Moderna or Johnson & Johnson, there's data suggesting it's actually got a better impact. And there is a lot of data confirming that for Moderna and Pfizer, even if it's the same shot, it does boost like up to 40 times the number, the amount of antibodies in your body. However, there's also it's interesting, the debate on the news that they were covering the debate and all the experts talking about these shots, they pointed out, generally speaking, the effect of being vaccinated twice is that it gives you really great protection against ending up with It doesn't prevent you getting COVID entirely, but it has a pretty marked impact on reducing the risk of death or serious cases. And so the suggestion there is that boosters should really be prioritized for people that are at high risk, enhanced risk of having serious complications, again, elderly or vulnerable people. And the suggestion is focus on them first, which is how it was first with the vaccines anyway. But yeah, the government is looking to focus on probably rolling out for the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions that make them more vulnerable, probably from December. So generally, a lot of people looking at what's happening in the US, which is starting ahead of us. Yeah, certainly it looks like probably booster shots for the general population next year, and they've already secured enough supply, I believe, to give the whole country a third shot. They've been quietly boosting reserves for that. The WHO, of course, has suggested that developed nations like Japan and the United States should, when there are countries in the world that are still unable to get vaccine supplies, they should be focusing on sharing vaccine supplies with countries that have none, rather than giving themselves third shots when they already have, most of the population that wants it with 2 shots. Kind of makes sense from the perspective that, yeah, you're still going to have people from those countries traveling around. And so, in the end of the day, it's unless everybody's vaccinated, it's kind of, in a way, it's going to keep the disease sort of raging. So it does make sense in some respects. But there again, this is the same WHO that said to Japan in, March last year, when Japan realized that its first few cases were coming from China, and so it was going to restrict travel from China. The WHO said Japan should not restrict travel from China. Because it's not clear that COVID was something serious enough that it should impede economic ties with China. People should not punish China for having this. So yeah, they've said a lot of stuff. WHO only seems to pop up in the news here, telling us to not protect ourselves. And again, things like saying masks are not necessary. Japan, everyone was just wearing masks. They weren't even asking. And it turns out Japan's been right. They were right to restrict travel. They were right to have everyone wearing masks. And I suspect they're right to start preparing a rollout of booster shots. And when my turn comes around, for what it's worth, again, I get flu shots every year. I've already had 2 Moderna shots. Why would I not get a booster shot for this, especially if it's still looks like it's a clear risk? I don't want to get long COVID. People, even when they don't have serious symptoms, they end up sick as hell. Just give me the shot. So yeah, they're definitely talking about it right now, and the government looks like they're going to be rolling them out in December. So yeah, to your question, Quint. Scrolling down. By the way, I think everyone here knows the drill. If you say my name, you don't actually even have to @mark. You just say my name and it will highlight. But yeah, vaccination rates are high in Japan because they are deferential to authority. Not the case. Well, the authority is not telling anyone to get them. In fact, they're very emphatic that it's. And I hate that. I hate that stereotype. Again, if you look at driving, if you look at umbrellas, you look at bicycles, I don't think that's the case. In fact, the point is the government here is not forcing anyone to get vaccinated at all. People are smart. They're not differential. It's not deference to authority. The anti-authority freaks in America are the best people in America. Yeah, well, they are people. When I say freaks, I'm talking about, I was talking about people in Japan, the people who show up at anti-vax protests and stuff like that. I believe that people who advocate for public disease and advocate against science or public safety, because they are selfish and they believe that their personal rights supersede that, the idea of campaigning to be an asshole. Those people in Japan, I believe, are generally just freaks, and there's something wrong with them. In America, I don't understand America at all. This is no commentary on America. Hey, I like shooting guns. I shot guns when I was a kid. I'm all for freedom. In fact, like I say, what I like about Japan is that we do all this stuff without mandates here, and without the government, ordering people to do anything. People do it on their own because they just think it through. So yeah, anyway, you can interpret it as you like, of course. I interpret it as I like it, as I like to do it. I don't think it's people being sheep. I think it's people being smart and normal. But that's obviously, I've lived here too long, so Kerberos Tenshi, platting rocks. I don't know what that means. In Okinawa, 23 escaped emus. Kumamoto, first snow in Hokkaido. First snow today. Indeed, it snowed. That is a thing that happened. Emus escaped in Kumamoto. Emus are some serious stuff. If you actually watch Extra Credits History Podcast, they actually have just done a 2-episode series on the Great Emu War in Australia. It's actually, it's not a joke. It's a thing that actually happened in Western Australia in the 1920s, I believe. There was an actual war. There were emus. They were allowing returned servicemen in Australia. They were giving parcels of land out in the desert to help develop Western Australia, and they were setting up. And the emus were just going nuts, like trampling and destroying all the crops. And they called in the army to try to help get rid of the emus. The problem was that the emus can run faster than cars and are basically pure muscle. And even when they were being shot with like anti-aircraft guns, which is what they brought out to shoot them with, the emus could actually keep running and keep stomping crops even when they were shot. And it was actually ended up that the military ended up withdrawing and giving up on the project. And the emus kept destroying all the crops. So effectively, in Australia, the emus beat the Australian army in the Emu War. It's actually, it's actually a thing that happened. So yeah, when I heard that 23 emus escaped in Kumamoto, I was kind of like, yeah, do you guys know what you're even dealing with? But yeah, they did actually eventually capture them. So that was a good thing. Japanese Marine launched new submarine Hakuga. I did not hear about that, but congrats on a new submarine. I still love the fact that the Izumo, I can't believe it's not an aircraft carrier. It's a helicopter platform ship, which they emphasize as a flat deck, so it can't be used. It doesn't have a curved deck for launching airplanes, but of course they were planning to buy for billions of dollars a whole bunch of F-35s that can take off like helicopters. So of course it's an aircraft carrier, and they've just had their first successful tests of landing F-35s on their their helicopter transport ships. So yeah, not quite as funny as the Chinese aircraft carrier that was bought with the excuse that it was Ukrainian. It was being converted. It was a Ukrainian former Soviet aircraft carrier that was being converted into a floating casino, and of course they made it into their first aircraft carrier. I believe that's the Liaoning. And I must admit that helicopter transport carrier is funny, but not as funny as a floating Ukrainian casino. AV84K, maybe the tangled history of mRNA vaccines by nature might be an interesting read. Maybe it might. Maybe I should read that. I don't know. I got like 2 shots of it in me, so it's too late. Whatever it is. Maybe I don't want to know. FDA approved. I don't. I'm good. Honestly, just like everything else, I don't understand how medicines work. I'm not bloody Louis Pasteur. If there's an illness, I take the shot, and that makes me a sheeple. I'm quite happy to be a sheeple who's taken my shots rather than somebody who's in hospital regretting it, honestly. Cobra Senshi, floating rocks in Okinawa. Okay, oh yeah, the floating rocks. An undersea volcano erupted and a whole bunch of pumice arrived in Okinawa. That was a thing. EDIR, you laugh, but it's a serious thing. Seriously, Extra Credits History Podcast. The very latest videos are about the Emu War, and this is right at the same time that the 23 of them escaped from Kumamoto. Coincidence? I think not. I think maybe the podcast was in on it. It's on YouTube. Extra Credits. It's an awesome channel. One of my favorite channels. Entertaining and well-written history. Milchman 2, good to see you, by the way. Kill a bird with anti-aircraft guns. Sounds about right. Apparently they had some spare ones lying around. It turned out not to be the best choice of weapon for shooting emus, but yes, QAnon emus indeed. Everyone's laughing, but it really happened. Seriously, look it up. Eric Bailey, good to see you, by the way. Good to have you in here. We've got Shripper, good to see you, Shripper. What has the socialist discussion to do with... Yeah, I've obviously missed a discussion there. I'm kind of glad I have. So thank you. Dan H. Have I read PM Kishida's first interview with foreign media? FT, Japanese owned. No, honestly, I find him so boring. And like just for an idea of just how completely empty Kishida is. I mean, look, he looks good in a suit. He speaks better than he's a better public speaker than Suga is, but he's just got no ideas. Which is, again, I mean, that's like what traditional LDP is. The fact that he had a stupid, whatever it is, the internal LDP party election where he got voted to be prime minister, where he was pledging to look after elderly people and come up with a new form of capitalism and whatever. And then when it came to writing the election party manifesto with policy promises, he just gave the job to Takaichi, who was competing against him. And none of his ideas from his internal becoming leader thing, none of his policy suggestions, zero came out in the LDP party manifesto. Takaichi just put her own ideas into it. He doesn't care. He doesn't have anything to say. Which again, that's what you vote for. When you vote for the LDP, you vote for business as usual, and he is ultimate business as usual. If you think everything is fine and nothing needs changing in a significant way, then that's him. So yeah, I don't know. I have not seen the interview with him because I just can't get interested in following what he has to say. Whenever I hear him talking, it's just platitudes, which is, I guess, fine. But yeah. TP, good to see you, TP. I do not recognize the handle, so good to have you in here. What are my thoughts as a Kiwi on New Zealand's policies towards their own citizens living abroad? Are a lot of Kiwis upset? Well, one, I'm quite out of touch with New Zealand because I haven't lived there since 1998. So 23 years away. I was in Australia for like half a year before I came out to Japan. So I've been away from New Zealand slightly longer than I've been in Japan. Also, I mean, New Zealand's just always been assholes to its own citizens, if I can put it that way. If you're away from the country for more than 12 months, you lose the right to vote. The good news is I don't have to pay tax there, so I'm glad for that, but I have no right to vote. New Zealand's always been underpopulated. Our ideal population is, I believe it's always been said, it's been 7 million, and when I left it was like 4 million, now it's like 5 million. It's going up, but it's based on attracting people to come and move to New Zealand and live there. So what New Zealand does is it's always allowed people who, even while they remain citizens of other countries, you can be Chinese, American, British, whatever, you can move to New Zealand and become a permanent resident pretty easily within 3 years. You can be there on a student visa for 3 years and then become a permanent resident. And if you're a permanent resident, you can vote the same as a citizen. Whereas if you're a citizen and you move away for 12 months, you lose your rights to vote. I voted like once. There was an election right after I'd been on a trip to New Zealand. So my right to vote was reactivated, and that's it. All I have to do is go back for a single trip. But there was a long time where I had no family, or at least no immediate family in New Zealand. So I had nowhere to go back to in New Zealand for a long time, and I was disqualified from voting. So I've always had a big problem with that. I would like to think that, as a New Zealand citizen, I should be allowed to. I mean, given that I've access to New Zealand media and news, I can still have an opinion and vote for people. But I'm not allowed to do that. So it doesn't surprise me at all that New Zealand is being tough on travel. And I know why. It's part of it's just practical. They don't have the quarantine resources for it. And they are going for zero COVID and locking down, which is maybe possible in New Zealand, although they're failing at it right now. So I kind of understand why they're doing it. It seems to me just part of being in New Zealand. Australia is doing the same thing, by the way. What do I do? Does it make me resent New Zealand? No, I'm kind of impressed that New Zealand's done such a good job. I'm just getting used to it. I want to go to New Zealand. I want to go see my dad, but I'm not expecting that to happen till next year. I hope I can go next year. Yeah, I think New Zealand should be a little bit nicer to its citizens abroad, including me. But there again, I understand that they prioritize the people who want to be there and deprioritize the people who leave. So yeah, that's just how the country is. I guess I have a lot of problems with New Zealand on some level, but I'm also quite proud of it. I think New Zealand's done quite well. So, all in all, I guess the Prime Minister's done an okay job as well, and the opposition has kind of picked the wrong issues to fight about as well. So if I could vote, honestly, I've swung. I've voted for both the Conservative National Party and the sort of liberal, American liberal, the left-wing Labour Party. I've voted for both, and I'd probably vote to keep the current government, which is left-wing. But if I could vote, but I can't because the Labour government won't let me. So that's my situation with New Zealand. I'm kind of like, yeah, meh. I guess that's where I land on that. Extra credits, yes. The condo, I don't understand how the medicine works, but I take it that doesn't mean I'm deferential to authority. Yes, you can post that on the wall. If I need legal advice, I don't ask Facebook. If I need medical advice, I don't look up Facebook. I might look up myself on Google or whatever. But if I need my sink fixed, I don't. I call a plumber. Right person, right expert for the right job. This is why we have science. People spend 10 years learning this stuff. You take the advice of doctors. So yeah, that's my general view. Eric Bailey, your hero Donald Trump told you to get the shot, so I'm waiting for it. Saitama is slow for the self-employed. I'm very sorry to hear that. And that's right, Trump was roundly booed by the QAnons for suggesting get vaccinated, but there you go. The Armed Forces of Organized Crime, welcome back. Chinese aircraft carriers do not have any steam catapults. I mean, look, they've got two of them, and they've got airplanes to land on them somehow. So don't dismiss the Chinese, and their floating Ukrainian casinos that they are trying to land enormous airplanes on without catapults. They'll figure it out. Honestly, I mean, look at what they're doing in space right now. China launched a hypersonic missile Russia recently did this as well. Those things are scary as hell because one, I mean, they actually fly, orbital speeds like 28 Mach 28. But they can also change direction, which means that most missile defense systems are based on predicting how missiles will come down on a ballistic trajectory. Like they can draw a line to where it's going based on its speed. These things can like change direction at any time and fly at Mach 28. You cannot defend against them. So, I guess people have always assumed that there's a nuclear war, that, you're not going to be able to get all their warheads. But Russia and China have both like jumped ahead on that. So, yeah, no, China's not messing around. They've been quite scary lately. And I guess America's going to do the same. But so it's another thing with Taiwan getting all wound up that, yeah, it's kind of scary times, I guess. Winged Star, good to see you, Winged Star. Welcome. How do I feel about the princess moving to America? I don't care. You know what? The more I see photos of protests against Princess Mako marrying Komuro, who I always remember, I always think of Tetsuya Komuro, who's the music producer who was in the 90s the biggest music producer in Japan, and then he ended up getting a bunch of debts, and then he ended up, actually getting jailed for selling music that he didn't have the rights to for millions of dollars. And hearing the money problems of Komuro's family, of the groom's family, his mum in particular, and her debts and dodgy scam history and so on, which is causing royalists to say that, we can't have someone from the royal family marry this person, even though technically when she marries him, she won't be in the royal family anymore. My opinion, which I've expressed on Twitter, is that I grew up in a country with a monarchy, just like Japan, a constitutional monarchy. We had the queen and we had the royal family, and we were told at school, this is the queen. She comes and visits us once every 30 years. She actually came. In fact, Princess Diana, after getting married, after the royal wedding, came to New Zealand when I was like 5 years old, and we stood by the highway. And I still remember watching Princess Diana go by when I was like 5 years old. And okay, that's the way the world is. The sky is blue. There's silly English people who drive by in a car and they're in charge of us, and we're all they seem like nice people, so who cares? That's how it always sort of was, and maybe it's middle age. But the more I see that the Meghan and Harry stuff, and the more I see stuff like this, and the stupid opinions that people have about what people like, it's like they don't want them to be human beings. They're humans who are symbols of the state, so they're supposed to remain dignified and not do anything, and stable and reliable and unchanging and last as long as possible. Right? Those are the criteria you really have for a monarch. In the moment that they have sex with someone, or the moment that they do anything at all interesting, they're immediately causing, that's a scandal, right? So why have people like how flawed is that as a system? You should have a redwood tree or a Galapagos turtle, something that can be big, never do anything, and live for hundreds of years. Make that the head of state. I mean, that fits the description much better than people. I don't know, maybe I've been away too long, but I think both for Japan and for New Zealand, I think having a monarchy is, it's increasingly silly. You can point out that it might have saved us from some constitutional crises that America's and Australia, countries with written constitutions, have. Of course, in Australia, having the Governor General, I guess, caused some constitutional crises, so that's a special case. But generally speaking, you can say that having this sort of vague institution helps stabilize things. But I don't see that. I just see a bunch of whenever I see news stories with protests against the royal wedding, I just think, what is wrong with people? Who cares? People are getting married. So the fact she's moving to America, I think is probably a good idea, honestly, just to get away from this country and the freaks, the 20 people who show up to a protest, and they are freaks. A country 120 million people, but that's what they are. And if Marco can get away from that and have a happy life as a normal person in America, I would say fly first class, go there in style, go to America. God. Should the African Americans who trusted the white lab coats in Tuskegee syphilis study have been differential to authority? Were they differential to authority? And is that what you believe doctors are today? I mean, look, if that's what you think, they are. If you think that doctors in America are like the government doctors, the military doctors who injected people with syphilis deliberately, go ahead. There are lots of Facebook groups that believe that, but again, the idea that you would reject a smallpox vaccine, the fact that measles is coming back to America because people basically see this. I mean, look, that was a terrible crime and a terrible breach of trust, and it was racist, and it was, it was the worst sort of thing. But I don't think that disqualifies trust in the entire medical profession, or the idea that Facebook is more reliable than your doctor for advice on what to do. So yeah, like I say, if you don't believe in medicine, yeah, go, you be you. Honestly, other than my general opinion that is silly, and I'm not gonna take that advice myself. Yeah, go ahead, freedom, yay. But not for me. Anyway, wow, so many comments. Quint Ranked, a redwood tree. Have you ever read Holmes on the common law? I foresee problems. Well, seriously, honestly, just in terms of what the monarchy does. I mean, look, New Zealand's monarch is a German lady who lives in England, who visits like once every 50 years. It might as well be a tree. Will last longer. Yeah, seriously, I think it would work. Quint Ranked, it seems a doctor in the US was funding research on enhanced functionality. I find this worrisome. I don't even understand what that means. And I'm an optimist. So you say something like that to me, I think, wow, enhanced functionality. Is it going to give me like superpowers? I want some of that stuff. That's just my opinion, but obviously I'm naive and I'm not talking to the right audience about that sort of stuff. So anyway, it is 11:25. Who would have known? I've actually only covered one story tonight. I am loving all the comments, by the way. Hey, Barry Bonds, good to see you. What's up, indeed? Long time. Good to see you in the comments there. Hey, by the way, if I've missed you or if I haven't said hello to you yet, say hello in the comments. I'm actually loving. I much prefer doing interactions like this. And by the way, I do. Let me also to the Condor and other people, even though I am saying contrary statements and I may be making off-colored humid statements. I love people disagreeing with me. I really do. I have a defective personality like that. So please never take anything that I say as any sort of a personal. And I realize right now I'm mocking people who are, taking horse medicines and, treating every doctor like they are the doctors from the Tuskegee Airmen syphilis experiment. And I'm making fun of those people, and I really probably, I shouldn't be making fun, especially if people here subscribe to that. But honestly, I this is intended as banter, okay? It's not intended as anything personal, and I encourage you to continue. One story. Well, I was pacing myself. Anyway, let's keep going. So, this was interesting. William Shatner, oldest man in space. He made it past the 100-kilometer Kármán line. Was only up there for like 2 minutes and then came down again. He was in character the entire time. But awesome. I mean, again, I want to do this. That was a bit of weightlessness there. Whoa. Holy crap. What happened there? Okay, let's just bring it back. Anyway, first Australian in space, first William Shatner in space, first lots of things. I'm into it. I also still loved it. As cool as the suborbital flights are, the fact that SpaceX went and did the Inspire 4 and just put a bunch of people into the farthest orbit since the Apollo age for like a bunch of days. I mean, that was a bit of a flex, but yeah, that brought home that SpaceX is still way ahead of Virgin and Blue Origin and so on. And Blue Origin, those BE4 engines, where are they? Give them to ULA and get New Glenn up, and then you can be competing with SpaceX. I mean, this New Shepard stuff is cute, but even Alan Shepard, they only did suborbital for 1 or 2 flights, and then they realized it was silly and they got into proper orbital stuff. So Blue Origin, I'm actually excited about what they're doing, and I want them to succeed. And I realize that rocket science is not something you can or should rush, especially when you're putting people on the rockets. But hurry up. I want to get my orbital thing. Just before the show tonight, I watched Ad Astra on Amazon Prime, and it was all right. Not great. I'd probably give it about 5.5. 6 because it was space. But yeah, it was okay. It wasn't bad. Anyway, movie reviews. Camden Line. I just said Carmen Line, so I'm thinking I've got Carmen Line on the head, and then I see Camden Hine. I assume that's how you pronounce it. Good to see you. Hello, student here waiting for a visa. As I said earlier in the show, I am at the most optimistic. I think if the 6th wave doesn't really materialize, and given that the election's over at the end of October, I'm hoping that you'll be able to get in here. I'm seeing people on Facebook saying that they're being let in right now. So you may be able to sneak in even like in November, but I certainly hope by February it's going to happen. So yeah, my Fifi's sorry, I did not mean to value. They're not taking horse medicines. Well, Yeah. Yeah, and Kondo, I'm not. So I am not treating you as trolling at all. And like I say, I hope you're not taking my responses as trolling either. I am making fun. I mean, I am doing that a little bit, but yes, hurry up with that damn rocket science. Yes, maybe I should just look up on Facebook how to make a rocket. Seriously, you probably can do that actually. Gunma is annoyed. Don't mess with Gunma. Gunma, a perfectly nice prefecture actually. This guy was on TV a lot. The governor. There was a ranking of the most attractive prefectures in Japan, and out of the 47 prefectures in Japan, Gunma was ranked 42. And by the way, neighboring Ibaraki was bottom, and Tochigi was also below Gunma. So the adjacent prefectures got it pretty rough as well. However, the higher ranked Gunma prefecture, which is still in generally the crappiest part of Japan, northern Kanto, where there is just basically nothing. I mean, I like Gunma. It's got Brazilian towns. It's got mountains. You can go snowboarding. It's got, it doesn't have beaches there. It's inland, I think. It's, it's not bad, but which is pretty much how the rating came out. But the governor is going to sue the people who did the survey, the popularity ranking survey, for defamation of Gunma. And let's face it. I mean, any part of Japan where you say dabe, is just going to have image problems. There's a lot of Yankees. There's a lot of bosses who up there. There's a lot of people who dress and talk like they're trapped in the rural 1980s, and they're just not gonna get high ranks compared to Kyoto or Hokkaido or Okinawa on good image rankings. Doesn't mean that Gunma's not a perfectly good place to go to, and getting all legal on them. I mean, there again, I mean, at least Gunma, they'll take you to court. Ibaraki, they'll actually, come and, smash the windows of your car and slash your tires. So, and that's why they're ranked 47. But, is it really necessary to go to court, Gunma? I don't think that's necessary. I like Gunma, honestly. I've been there. I've had nothing but good stories to have with Gunma. So, no tsunamis. There we go, Rambato. Excellent point. Christopher Liu, good to see you. Yeah, it's Calvinism. I don't know if it's not Milchman 2. I think I said hello to you earlier, but just in case I didn't, I'm saying it now. Hello, good to see you. Well, we are up on time, but you know what? I've only got one story left, and it's one John's son. It's one that he asked for. 30-year wage slump hangs over distribution debate. So this is kind of partly where, I can go into this a little bit. Japan has, in terms of you take the top 10% and the bottom 10% of wage earners, Japan has in the OECD among the least disparate. It's got the most even wage distribution of people in Japan. However, Kishida, it's kind of ironic in Japan. It's one of these things as well. You have to understand, you can't just assume that the LDP are the Republicans and the CDP are the Democrats. You can't look at it that way. In many ways, the LDP is just like the institutional governing party of Japan. Japan is culturally and psychologically quite socialist in nature, and by extension, the LDP, by some measures, is actually almost extreme socialist. I mean, there's universal medical care, there's government control of agriculture. There was until very recently a lot of state-controlled industries. They have a lot of, and the whole success at reducing Japan from being a very stratified society with peasants and aristocracy, like even up to the end of World War II, to one of the least, wage distributed, to one of the most equal societies in the OECD. That was done by the LDP, and it was done through a bunch of very harsh measures with inheritance taxes and income taxes and so on, where they taxed the crap out of the rich, and they did a lot of public spending, a lot of government public works to give jobs to people, in rural prefectures. To give a lot of money to farmers, to give a lot of money to road workers and construction workers and stuff like that. And the result is it went like this. In Japan, it's very even. However, that said, it still is a popular refrain for people like Kishida saying that there's too much inequality, and we're going to try to find what inequality there is left and then stomp on it even more and make it more. We're going to look to redistribute wealth and make sure that capitalism in Japan is not going to. There is concern that over the contract and temporary workers now increasing in the economy, that is going to lead to more inequality, and he's suggesting we need to change tack on this. But that said, there is a broader problem which Nikkei is pointing out that, Japan actually is still doing relatively okay in terms of disparation between rich and poor, but also it is, the overall problem is that wages in Japan have not changed. In fact, they've gone down slightly in the last 30 years, since the mid-1990s, since the bubble popped. Before I came to Japan, starting wages today in the same companies are basically the same as they were in 1999, honestly, the same as they were in 1994. Most countries, wages have just gone up, inflation's gone up, and wages have gone up. Japan has not had inflation, it's had deflation, but the wages have gone down actually more than the value of goods have, which means in real terms, living costs, people's wages have gone down. Japan is actually now within the OECD. It's getting to a point now where the cost of living, or the wages, the average wage, and the purchasing power of wages is higher in South Korea and Taiwan than it was in Japan. And this is linked with the idea of Taiwan. Now you're having a situation that those countries which Japan used to offshore work to as cheap labor and cheap factory labor, that they would offshore, outsource lower cost work to. Now it's coming back. Taiwan's investing in semiconductor factories in Japan. When it used to be the other way around. It's partly for security reasons, obviously, but it's also partly because Japan is actually now quite economical. It's nearby, it's a lot more safe than it is. So, for Taiwan, it makes a lot of sense, and the fact that the Japanese government is also investing a lot in trying to attract those kind of technology industries. There's an acute awareness that Japan has through outsourcing a lot of tech to China, just like America has, and so on. But not just China, but also to America, that Japan is vulnerable in the case of conflict in a lot of these areas. And the government is now looking at the need to build up domestic capability around. There's a bunch of nationalists, mainly from the Abe factions, that actually want to ensure that Japan can mine its own rare earths, that it isn't dependent on any other country for its semiconductors, that it isn't, as we're learning right now, you don't want to be dependent on countries, especially countries that might want to turn off the taps just to screw you over. So a lot of things happening at the moment, but the fundamental thing is that while Kishida is talking about redistributing wealth, there is the problem that the overall wealth of the country is falling. And there's a suggestion that the Nikkei is making that before you worry about redistributing wealth, you should first try to get wages going up again. You should emphasize wage growth. And again, this is kind of something, again, where Kishida, the equivalent of the Republicans, but Trump was actually very socialist. In terms of his sort of economic policies, he was not pro-business at all. He was constantly bashing on businesses, actually. In a way, like Biden's just continuing a lot of what Trump did, and the LDP's always been like that. They've never, they've been saying employers increase wages for your workers. They've been all Bernie Sanders putting pressure on them, and Kishida's doing that. But yeah, they've got to figure out how to get the economy spinning to be generating value again, because it's just been spiraling down. And so Nikkei's saying that the whole point of having these lower paid contract workers and so on is it gives companies the flexibility to be able to generate more profits, to be able to generate inflation again, which can then increase wages, although that's a little bit trickle down. But the Nikkei is pointing out that maybe the government should be focused on stimulating the economy before it focuses on trying to forcibly redistribute wealth again. Anyway, One Johnson, you had one other topic, which was the government strategically investing in tech industries, which I also read and was a bit like what I just said. They're a bit afraid, particularly in the case of conflict. Frankly, primarily China, that's the easy one. But even America, they're worried about being dependent on that, and they're worried about what might happen in a conflict or whatever, of having those things turned off. So, yeah, interesting. I don't know how far that will move, but Christopher Luke, TSMC is, it's both. It's interesting that it is now. I find it fascinating that it's actually economically viable, although, of course, the government is pouring a ton of subsidies into supporting this. So it is as much for Japan's security as it is for Taiwan's. But it is fascinating that after years where Japan, was the leader in semiconductors, and eventually Taiwan, they first outsourced to Taiwan, and then Taiwan got better at it than Japan, or at least more cost effective, and now Japan pulled out of semiconductors and Taiwan took it over. It is just a funny evolution that Taiwan's moving it back, but you are correct. It is indeed Taiwan now shifting it back, and security concerns behind that. Quint Rankid, will Japan start buying fossil fuels from Canada? Well, there's an interesting thing that it's been buying from Iran for such a long time, and they've kind of gotten a pass from America for doing that. Again, the fossil fuels that it gets, it's probably going to keep getting from the Middle East, and I don't see it's probably going to focus more on Australia, and it's going to focus more on transitioning to more renewable energy sources through blue hydrogen, which will be from fossil fuels, but converted into a cleaner energy when it comes into Japan. So we'll see what happens. I don't really see much changing in terms of buying from Canada. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. Cobra Tenshi, coffee and gyudon got more expensive in Japan. So yeah, it's starting, but there we go. Freto-san, capitalism is actually all about the concentration of wealth. Well, this is where Japan is arguably not very capitalist, because the government's been forcibly redistributing wealth incredibly successfully. In spite of the fact that it operates on principles of capitalism, polls have shown that most Japanese people do not consider the owners of companies to be the shareholders. They consider it to be the workers. So like I say, Japan is just psychologically very socialist, and that goes all the way into the LDP. The LDP is actually just the same on this sort of thing, which is fascinating. I'm going to wrap up when the comments stop, but since the comments are still going, I will still do that. The Armed Forces of Organised Crime, I did not know that New Zealand bans scissors. I wonder how they're cutting things. I did not hear about that. The Armed Forces of Organised Crime, I imagine how, yes, you'd be concerned about that. That's how they got Aomo Shinrikyo on, by the way, if it was for you having paper cutters. Kerberos Tenshi, the oldest Toshiba factory, indeed, the oldest TV factory in the world. I mean, Toshiba's obviously going through a very, very tough time at the moment, but yes, they shut that down. Oh, they're replacing it with mass-producing fuel cells. That is interesting. I didn't realize that part of it. Quinn Rankid, did I cover Korea wanting to change the name of the Sea of Japan? Sorry, I did not. You mentioned earlier in the comments that they've launched a new publicity campaign. I mean, they do publicity. If you fly into Seoul or, Gimpo Airport, they've got posters all over the place. They've got like, models of Tokuto Takeshima Island and posters everywhere that, this is our island and we're very secure about that fact and we wish no one would talk about it. This is our island, they've got that everywhere. They've got, this campaign to change the name of the Sea of Japan to the East Sea. And I've always suggested that the ideal compromise, given that the East Sea is just so... Japan wants to call it the Sea of Japan, which is very Japan-centric, and Korea wants to call it the East Sea, which is just very, again, geocentric. Just call it the West Sea. There's your compromise right there. You're welcome. I just solved that problem. What a stupid name. I mean, sure, the Koreans are allowed to call it the East Sea, but the idea that they'd force Japan to call it the East Sea, that's just a troll. So, that is what that is about, the Sea of if you Japan. Yeah, that's probably what they would lobby for. That's just Korea being Korea, and it's election time over there. Oh, Japan is going to have a 72-hour stream now. No, I'm not going to have a 72-hour stream, but I am 10 minutes over like I always am. So there we go, even with 3 topics, I am over. One Johnson, thank you. The plans are setting up for a long-term now PPP in Japan, even though it doesn't feel like we would continue low purchasing power. I think that's kind of part of the managed decline of Japan, that is where it is going. But yeah, Quint Rankid, you think it should be the Sea of Quint Rankid? Get some ads on TV. It could happen. The East, West, North, South Sea, that could be it. The Sea of Eric Bailey, I see the idea is catching on. Maybe it should just be all the names. Maybe it should just, maybe they should call it like, I don't know, the UC. They could be like YouTube, except, it would be like you. And whoever sees it, they can just pretend it's about them. That would be great. That would be the compromise. I am up on time. I do need to log off. It's been great talking to you all. I like it when it's more interactive like this. I do enjoy the banter and the comments, and hope you're liking the non-monetized version. I'm going to continue with that. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Get vaccinated, unless you don't want to get vaccinated, in which case, stay safe and stay away from people. Take good care. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter if you like the show. Please remember to like. It does help the channel, especially with monetization off. I don't think that's going to penalize. Honestly, it didn't benefit, so it'd be weird if it penalized. But yeah, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Like, do all that good stuff. Have a good week. I've got nothing else to do. I'm going to be back in next week. So stay safe. Ka kite ano. Peace. Boom. See you later. Have a good week, everybody, and thank you again for the comments, especially the comments that are challenging me. Yes, I actually really appreciate that. You're most welcome to make those. I do appreciate that. The condo, anytime. So talk to you later. Peace.